What is up, Dong Army? It's your boy Royce. This video is going to be a really pivotal one for me because, in case you couldn't tell from the title already, I am getting extremely desperate for views, which is why I am branching out and making productivity videos, which there are not nearly enough of on YouTube. So this video in particular is going to be on how to stay focused and productive for 12 hours at a time. Before I get into the meat of this video, I just want to say the main thesis that I'm trying to thrust here. Oh gosh, I don't know why I just said that. It's so gross. If there's anything that you take away from this video, I hope it is this one thing, okay? This one thing I want you to take away from this video is that you should reduce the amount of time that you are studying or, being productive, and use that extra time with relaxing. Use it with exercising. Use it with sleeping. Use it with spending time with friends. Whatever you use, whatever you do to decompress, recreational drugs, doesn't matter. That is so important because even though you're spending less time being productive, you're spending more time away from work. Your mind is clearer. You're not thinking about work all the time. And so once you return to work, your mind's refreshed. You'll be working less hours, but you'll be even more productive in those hours. Of course, this advice to cut down on your hours only applies if you can help it, if you can control the number of hours that you put into your work. But there are obviously circumstances where, for example, you're doing a surgery shift at the hospital where you're forced to be there. You're forced to do the 12 hours. So I hope at least the tips in this video help you. In case you don't know who I am, I'm a third year MD PhD student at UPenn. This program is a really complex, really long program. Basically just boils down to 2 years of medical school, 4 years of the PhD, and then 2 years of medical school at the end there. And being a third year, that puts me right in the start of the PhD. And so before I started my PhD, I actually did 6 months of the hospital. I had 3 months of surgery, and I had 3 months of internal and family medicine. These are the most intense clerkships that UPenn has to offer to its medical students. And I've been through a lot. When it comes to the surgery clerkship, for example, you have to be at the hospital at 5:30 a.m., which means you have to wake up before that in order to get ready and commute over. And you get there 5:30 a.m. and you have to be there until 5:30 p.m. So, very much it's like 12 hours straight of just, intense clinical hospital medicine. Yeah, during the hospital, you have to, monitor the patients, talk to them, run physical exams on them, and obviously operate on them too. And, all during your time at the hospital. And also after, when you go home, you have to study for shelf exams, which are standardized tests that you take at the end of each of your clinical rotations. And so you had, these shelf exams you have to study for that was kind of like a non-stop time sink as well. And, talking about this all aloud right now, it's kind of unbelievable that I went through this. It feels like absolute torture. And in some ways it kind of was, it's like you were forced to be at the hospital. It was part of your clinical grade. You couldn't get around it. We had to be there as part of our education. We kind of just had like a ball and chain around our ankles, to be honest with you, just trying to stay awake at the operating table while we're retracting and sometimes suturing if we get lucky. All of this is to say that, I've gone through a very intense time, but I've also developed a few adaptive techniques that have helped me, stay productive throughout this time and stay level-headed. And I hope you guys can find this helpful too as my viewers. So the first thing I want to talk about is your mindset. And so what I mean by that is, reminding yourself why you're doing this in the first place. This is something that's helped me a lot, actually, is, for example, when I'm in medical school, reminding myself that I'm not just studying to get good grades. That's not my end goal. My end goal instead is to treat patients, talk with people, to make them feel better, to see, their smile at the end of the day. That's the gratification that I'm searching for. But knowing that is my motivation, which is to be the best clinician, the best physician that I possibly can, makes me a lot more motivated because I'm like, there are lives at stake. People's health and well-being are at stake. I actually look forward to being tested. I look forward to being asked questions by the doctors, by the attendings, by the residents, because I know that these are opportunities for me to learn. I look forward to being wrong because even if I'm wrong, again, with this mindset shift, I focus on the end goal and I know that I won't get it wrong in the future because I remember how embarrassing it was for me to get it wrong in front of, the entire team and to look super dumb. I mean, more dumb than I usually look. And, I feel a natural high when I get things wrong, but also when I get things right because I have the end goal in mind. Obviously, this applies in the hospital, but also when it comes to science and being a scientist. It's really boring sometimes to be in the lab because you're just doing the same stuff over and over again. You're just in this windowless room, toiling away in the salt mines that is your lab. And it's easy to lose sight of what the ultimate goal is. And the final goal should be, I guess publishing papers, and I guess that's a fine motivation to have, but also it's to kind of better society. You know what I mean? You're furthering knowledge. For me, for example, when it comes to developing electronics that'll be eventually implanted into brains, my motivation is I have to remind myself that I'm going to be making technologies that will have an impact on people's lives. It's just like in the hospital. You know, my technologies will help us better understand diseases. My technologies will better, treat diseases, ultimately better the livelihoods of people. And so whenever I'm in, the doldrums of lab and I'm feeling just down and just super bored with the repetitive nature, the monotonous nature that is basic science research, I just remind myself what this is all about, and I just feel a lot better. So again, when it comes to mindset, I have to remind myself that I'm trying to be the best physician and the best scientist that I can be for the sake of others. The next tip I want to talk about is to not drink coffee. So before you click off this video and unsubscribe, let me explain, okay? I don't think this applies to everyone, but I think this definitely can help some people who are just like me. So I would say I am not a psychologically strong person. And so when it comes to coffee, there's a huge psychological effect that plays a role when it comes to my, addiction to caffeine, to be honest with you. Back when I used to drink coffee, this was like all of undergrad, I would wake up in the morning and I'd honestly feel terrible until I got my first sip of coffee. And I knew this was purely psychological because I would feel the effects of the coffee right when I took the sip. I'd immediately feel better. I'd tell my wife, Jackie, wow, I just feel like a totally new person, and obviously she knew and I knew that this was a complete placebo effect. It takes time for coffee to get into your GI system and your blood, into your brain. Obviously, I'm like a very psychologically weak person. And so what happened was over Thanksgiving break in my first year of medical school, I went off coffee cold turkey. And honestly, I felt terrible for like a week. I just wake up, crave coffee and have to tell myself hey, this is better for me in the long run, probably. So whenever I were to drink coffee, let's say graph it out. X-axis here is time, Y-axis is performance. Basically, I would, feel bad, and then I drink coffee and my performance goes up for a little period of time. And then after an hour or so, my performance would just drop a lot. I would have to coast again until I get my next sip of coffee. And I wouldn't drink cups of coffee at a time. I would only probably drink half a cup of coffee per day. I was a very psychologically weak person. I mean, I am a psychologically weak person, I guess. When I stopped drinking coffee and I finally, forgot the feeling of coffee, then I just got used to this feeling of being chronically just slightly tired. And so again, this doesn't apply to everyone, but I do think it applies for people like me who are more susceptible to the psychological effects of coffee. And that's because caffeine is ultimately a drug. And your body takes it in, your performance goes up, but then your body metabolizes it over time and pees it out, I think. Because it's a drug, you have to titrate and keep drinking coffee to get back to those peaks. And so, even thinking about coffee right now, I'm just like, oh man, I could maybe, use some. But no, it's really one of those things where, for me at least, my life has been a lot better without. The next thing I want to talk about is sleep. I really hope this goes without saying, but sleep is super important. I only say this because, I've known some people in undergrad, even despite, knowing the psychology research of sleep, they still just refuse to sleep. So my recommendation is to get at least 6.5 hours if you can. Honestly, more, if your body needs it. For me personally, I need 7 hours, 40 minutes of sleep every night. Even if I get just 7 hours flat, or, God forbid, 6:30, then, I start to feel really terrible. And basically my entire day just feels completely unproductive. I am in a bad mood. I just can't be motivated. To be honest with you, even if sleep didn't affect performance, I still would get plenty of sleep because it just feels terrible to be sleep deprived. So yeah, this has really carried me through, 2 intense years of medical school, 4 intense years of undergrad, is always prioritizing my sleep. Even if I had to, study more, I would just drop my stuff and go to sleep, get my 7 hours, 40 minutes of sleep whenever I could. And my body really rewarded me in the long run. Sleep doesn't just improve your mental health. Sleep also improves your physical health, like your cardiovascular health, in case you don't really believe in mental health or something. I highly recommend getting your requisite hours of sleep per night and practicing good sleep hygiene so that you get the best amount of sleep possible. And by that I mean, maybe half an hour before you go to sleep, just don't look at any screens. Make sure you sleep around the same time every night, wake up around the same time every morning. Hope you find this helpful. This is like the most important thing that you can prioritize on when it comes to staying focused for 12 hours at a time. The next thing I want to talk about is power napping and meditating. So on the topic of sleep, if I can help it, I just never study when I'm tired. So, I'm actually just such a wimp. I feel just the least bit tired. I'm like, okay, I just need a power nap or I need to meditate. These are the two quickest ways that I found to get a quick pick-me-up. And something I like to do all the time is start with a meditation and transition it into a power nap. It's a pro tip. Try not to spread the word too much. But the trick is, just get a guided meditation where the guy's voice is super boring so that, halfway through the meditation, you naturally fall asleep. Don't set an alarm. And that power nap will actually transition into a full sleep. It's wonderful. It's really a magical experience. You're gonna feel so much better when you wake up at 5 a.m. the next day. When it comes to power napping, I'll literally just set like a 12-minute timer or like a 19-minute timer. The more prime the number, the better, to be honest with you. Literally, I'll be like to my Apple Watch, hey Siri, set a timer for 19 minutes. And here, actually, my phone's going off because I said, hey Siri. Oh, here it goes again. I gotta stop saying that phrase. And I found that even for a short amount of time, I feel very rejuvenated after power napping. Literally, I'll go from, being like a 2 out of 10 in terms of energy to like a solid 7 out of 10. I don't think you need to actually fall asleep. Just have the intentions of, being disconnected from work, not thinking about anything else other than, yourself and trying to relax. I think that's extremely effective. But, obviously if you're like me and you have, obstructive sleep apnea and are chronically a mouth breather and chronically sleep deprived, then obviously, you can go to sleep really easily. So I can definitely fall asleep and wake up in those 12 minutes. And I'm like, wow, I hit REM, you know what I mean? I hit my REM sleep and I'm feeling good. But yeah, not everyone can be as privileged as I am. The same thing kind of applies to meditating, where it's the intention of disconnecting from your work and focusing on just how, your body feels, focusing on the sensory information that your brain is receiving from the outside world. For example, the sounds you hear that you don't really pay attention to. Like right now, I'm hearing, the fan of my AC unit going off, or, the weight of my butt on my seat, or the sensation of my shirt on my body. Things like that. These really help you, get your mind off of work just for even a brief moment, and that's really helpful. Some ways for you to practice meditating practically is to use phone apps. So I do a lot of guided meditations. I highly recommend like Headspace, I think it's what it's called. It's a free phone app. They give you a free like 10-day course, like 10 lesson course. And basically I'm too stubborn to pay for it. So I just replay like day 7 of that same, guided meditation. So literally every time he'll be like, welcome back to day 7 of, being happy. And I'm like, okay, well, I find that guided meditation apps are a really great way to practice meditation because it's just hard to kind of do it on your own if you don't really have experience doing that. Another great way is if you have the Apple Watch app called Mindfulness. So basically it'll vibrate and you just follow your breath, inhale, exhale with the vibrations. And that's another way for you to just focus on, one meditation object, which is your breath, and again, detach from the thoughts of work and of, for me, medicine and science. The next thing I want to talk about is working out. My recommendation is to go at least 3 times per week. I tend to go 4 to 5 to 6 times per week, just depending on how my week is looking and how my body's feeling. And a pro tip for you medical students out there when it comes to working out, just stay in your scrubs when you work out. I go to the undergrad gym at UPenn, and sometimes I'm just fully in my scrubs. I mean, partly because I just forgot any other clothing, but also, for functional reasons, because, it's like completely terrible fabric. It's non-stretchable at all. So it kind of keeps the core tight, it makes you suck in the belly whenever you do squats. And it also lets those undergrads know that you're a doctor, and therefore they shouldn't approach you when you've been on a bench press for like 2 hours watching YouTube videos in between your sets. And what I tend to do is I just lift weights. I try to avoid aerobic exercise like running, but if you are indeed a masochist and you love running, power to you. I don't think it really matters if it's anaerobic, which is like weightlifting, or aerobic exercise, which is like running. I think they both kind of serve the same effect. And I've noticed that even though you're expending energy when you work out, you tend to have more energy when you're out of the workout. You feel more energized throughout the day. I've noticed that empirically with myself, and I highly recommend this tip, which is working out 3 days a week if you can. And obviously, it's kind of like sleep where, your days are busy, you have a lot of studying to do, but I really think you should just skip studying for like an hour to work out that day. And the payoff is really a lot better. The whole idea here is, even though you're losing an hour of productivity, the hour you lost, right? Let's say you study 8 hours in a day. Instead of studying 8 hours in a day, you're studying 7 hours in a day, and you spend one of those hours exercising. Those 7 hours are gonna be way more productive. You know what I mean? That's the same idea with sleep. Even though you're studying for like 1 less hour or 2 less hours in a day, you're gonna be way more productive in those limited hours. And even if you're not more productive, you're just gonna feel a lot better. Why be sleep deprived if you can help it? Why feel not energetic if you can help it with exercise? So these are definitely some tips that I recommend. Highly, highly recommend. Another thing that goes hand in hand with that is diet. So I know what you're thinking. If you're a longtime fan of this channel and you've seen my many day in the lives, you're probably thinking that I'm just a complete sham because I eat a bunch of garbage all the time, which is true. But what you don't see off screen is that for many of my meals, I actually eat really healthy. I eat a lot of vegetables and a lot of whole grains, a lot of lean meats. I swear it's not what it looks like in those videos. It's just like on those especially busy days. I don't know why. I get free food on some days and I just can't help it. And I just eat like 5 slices of pizza. But for the most part, I promise, I eat pretty healthy. And Jackie, my wife's trying to make me eat healthier too, because she wants me here on this earth, longer than if I were to not eat healthy. So, it's really easy as a college student or a medical student to just eat junk. You're exposed to fast food all the time. Like I, am guilty of this. I've noticed, just like with exercise, my energy levels are a lot better when I've eaten a lot healthier. I've eaten fruits. It just really helps, especially really sugary fruits. And I get a sugar high. Life's just a lot better that way. The next tip I want to talk about is to enjoy your free time. So this is definitely a problem where, I'm gonna throw some shade here, but I've seen a lot of medical students make the problem of not enjoying their free time. I've seen it at UPenn. I've seen it at a lot of other medical schools too. My other medical student friends at other schools. Many of them commit this mistake where they just want to do studying all the time. Literally like 12 hours in a day they're studying, which to me is just completely not healthy. Like, how can you study for 12 hours in a day? You're telling me you wake up like 8 a.m. and you're studying from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m.? Like, that's kind of absurd, to be honest with you. My honest opinion is that you could probably cut that down by 2 to 4 hours. So instead of working 12 hours in a day, you could work 10 or 8 or even 6, depending on how productive you're feeling and how much work there is to be done. And if you don't believe me and you don't think this is possible, just think back to the last time where you worked, productively for many hours straight. Were you actually working all those hours? I highly doubt it. You're probably browsing social media, watching YouTube. Try trimming the fat there and maximizing your time inside of work so you work fewer hours and can ultimately enjoy more of your leisure time. Spending time with friends, spending time with your, romantic partner, or doing hobbies. I like to play basketball and I like to work out and I like to play video games too. These are things, and to make YouTube videos, obviously. I do it once a week or 2 weeks or 3. This is really hard to do practically, but here's a rule of thumb that I like to use, which is, on weekdays after 6 p.m., my rule is just stop doing any more work. Literally, if I'm in the middle of something, I'm just gonna stop and I'll pick it up the next day at like 8 or 9 or whenever I start, okay? And on Saturdays, literally just don't do any work on Saturdays. That day is completely off limits. It is protected for you. And that's just one way of implementing this practically, is setting this hard boundary. I literally just don't study after 5 p.m. That is like protected time for me with my friends, for me with my wife. No one can cut into that time. So that's gonna do it. I think that's basically all the talking points I had. I just have this notepad here with a few bullet points, and I just kind of rambled. So I hope you guys found this helpful. I've been thinking about this for the last few weeks, ever since I've ended clinical rotations. I've been thinking about how I possibly managed to get through this extremely difficult time in my life, because it's been extraordinarily difficult, to say the least. When I think back to it, I'm like, wow, I really did like 12 hours in a day of just hospital work, not to mention, having to study here and there, doing all this other, stuff for school. It really was a blur. I wanted to make this video while it's still fresh in my mind, and and I hope you all take something away from this. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys found it helpful and entertaining, and I'll see you guys next week. And again, this is only if you can help it, only if you have control over the number of hours that you put in. For example, for things like studying. If it's for things like surgery shifts at a hospital and you're forced to be there, then obviously there's nothing much you can do about it. You just have to endure the 12 hours. Even though you can't control the number of hours, I hope you can use the advice in this video in order to set the intention of maximizing your time outside of work, because I really think that makes a difference.